Thank you so much, Ved, for joining us on this podcast at Dawdle.live. And thank you so much, leaders, for watching these shows. We have got a very fine personality today with us, joining us to share his insights, kind of on various interesting topics that we have. But before we go there, I would like to give a pretty introduction about him that I have framed. So Ved is a seasoned cybersecurity and IT operations leader with nearly 2 decades of experience across global enterprises. He's currently serving as security delivery and account security office lead at DXC Technologies. He specializes in driving secure delivery models, managing enterprise security programs, ensuring alignment between business objectives and cybersecurity frameworks. He has also held prior leadership roles at Capgemini, and where he has led large-scale global operations, cross-functional teams, and complex program deliveries. His experience spans across security operations, account management, and enterprise IT services in various geographies. He has also, kind of worked in organizations like JP Morgan, Symantec, and Microsoft, and he brings in a deep expertise in infrastructure, security solutions, and client-centric delivery. He's known for his leadership in managing global teams and driving operational excellence. He kind of consistently enables secure, scalable, and high-performance enterprise environments. Thank you so much, Ved, for joining us. And I
Thank
hope I did justice to your profile.
Thank you, Rishikesh. Thank you for the introduction and inviting me here. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Ved. And so how do you maintain this young look? Like, any secrets behind it?
I'm young. Let's put it that way.
So, like, do you do yoga or something like this?
No,
Like
no, I hardly get time for that. No,
running, yoga, and
hardly. I like walking. I do walk sometime, but yeah, no time for exercise yet. But I plan to start that soon.
now, so our topic today is the attack surface. It is a phrase we kind of hear often in cybersecurity, but not everyone outside the field knows exactly what it means. Can you break it down for us, like, and explain why it has become such a big issue for organization today?
All right. I think that's a very good question to start with. So let me put it this way. Simple definition for attack surface is anything an attacker can use to target you to cause harm. It's not just your servers or emails, it's everything. It's each of your device, each application, then all your employees, processes, your vendors, or any connection to outside world which an attacker can use to cause harm. So that's what I call attack surface.
So identifying attack surface is the first thing for any
Right.
organization.
Let me give you an example. So for in layman's term. So let's consider a building. 20 or 30 years back, initial days of computing, it had one door or maybe one window, and then there were a few people who had keys so that you could enter the building. So that was few years back. Now today, the building has grown in size. Now it has got say 100 doors, 1,000 windows, and then it has got tunnels connecting to 50 different buildings. That's how complex it has become. So it's not as easy as it used to be. So your attack surface has transitioned. It's nowhere close to what it used to be. So in other words, I put it in different layers also. So let's call layer one. Layer one is your compute, your core IT systems. Layer two is your processes and employees. Then layer three is your vendors, the whole supply chain. Layer four is the cloud computers. Then you have IoT and OT. And then there is layer five, which is a recent thing, which is your national infrastructure. So that's how you can look. You could look at attack surface in these layers. So initial days, it was very easy, like maybe layer one, and now you could just relate it to these layer fives.
Yeah. So cybersecurity as a subject has become complex now.
It has become very complex. So if you look 10, 15 years back, CISO positions were not so
Not there.
common.
Yes.
Yeah, but now it's kind of mandatory.
Yes. Now I think CTO is going into oblivion, but CISO is kind of coming up.
Right. So when we talk about like some breaches, what happened, that gives example like I'll put it like what happened in 2013 Target incident. So 40 million credit card records were stolen. It was through some contractor. What happened after that was the CTO was fired, CEO was fired. There was no CISO position that time. Nowadays, it's CISO who is ultimately accountable for this.
Yeah. And it's kind of a very cross-functional role as well now, because you're talking about tunnels, windows, doors. So this CISO should work with each and every department and function inside the
That's right.
organization. and you should have a visibility of that.
Right. So it's no more just the IT role. It's no more just business. It's just much more than that. It's even a national level now. You can put that. It's national security is linked to your organization security, especially if you are in some critical services. So it's a lot more than just the IT or business.
And Ved, you have worked over 2 decades across enterprise IT operations and security leadership at a scale. But today, you want to reframe the entire conversation and you call cybersecurity a national priority,
Right.
not just a boardroom one.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through that journey and how did we get here?
All right. Cybersecurity has gone through three distinct eras. Era one was relatively simpler. We have cybersecurity was just an IT problem. No one outside IT cared about this. There were very few devices on the internet. So just to put that in number, in 1988, there were only 6,000 devices on internet. To secure them, what's done was you install a firewall, install antivirus on your servers or your computers. That was enough. CISO role didn't exist at that time. Then this was the situation in 80s and 90s roughly. Starting 2000s, 2010, organizations started realizing that cybersecurity is not just IT problem. It's a business problem because of the consequences. The turning point was the Target incident, which happened in 2013. 40 million credit card records were stolen there, and it was through a contractor. The CISO lost job. Sorry, not the CISO. CEO lost the job. CTO lost the job there. And then that made the board realize that cybersecurity is super important. Then there was 2017 was WannaCry ransomware, which spread to 150 countries in just a day. The hospitals in UK were almost down. They had to send back the patients. So those were the incidents which made us realize that cybersecurity is not IT problem. It's business problem. And in a way, it went to era three also from that incident because it impacted your national health system. And then there is another incident which happened in US again. So it's like what you call your gas supplies were stopped due to ransomware, the cyber attack which happened. So these were the impacts of cybersecurity. Or you don't considering cyber security as business problem. If you think it just as an IT, this could be the consequences. And then era three. Right now we are in era three. The problem is a lot of organizations are still in era two mindset, whereas we are living in era three. I'll explain why I'm calling it era three. Again, in US, the FBI and NSA, they found that Chinese cyber group, which is a state-sponsored group, was inside the critical infrastructure of US government that access for over 5 years in some of the cases like energy or transport or water. They were not doing anything. They were not asking for ransom. They were not stealing data. They were just sitting quietly there, probably just gaining more access and making themselves ready when the situation arises, when they have to use it. Just imagine 5 years sitting there, no one knows there. And yeah, so that's about the national level security. There are many other incidents. So I'll give you another incident. What's happening right now? Iran, Israel, US war situation. I don't know if you read this or not. So Israel hacked into the traffic cameras in Tehran. They collected the videos, the footage, and then they used it to launch an attack, and the attack which killed their supreme leader. So that's the power of security. Got into your traffic camera, which probably Iran was using for surveillance. So they were watching their own people, and Israel got into that, and probably they had the access for months or years, and they were just preparing for to use it. So these are the two incidents. And the importance it's getting at the national level is evident in another example, which is what happened in Singapore. I guess there was a budget speech and the prime minister of Singapore, he got up, he mentioned the private companies are the weak link in cyber defense for Singapore. So that highlights the importance of cybersecurity in this era three. It's no more just a CISO's problem or board's problem, it's national problem. That's the reason I mentioned it is a national issue.
You talked about traffic signals. So I think we have got a question on OT as well, because
Right.
that is where the protocols are pretty weak still.
Exactly. And the reason for that is OT systems, they were not designed
Yes,
keeping the network security in mind. So they
yes,
were designed to work in isolation. But what has happened is this efficiency, what we talk about. So for efficiency, those systems are connected to your IT systems.
yeah.
And the integration is the issue here. So they are connected and it's not that easy to patch them. You cannot, just shut down them for patching or maintenance activity. That makes them vulnerable. As they are connected and not patched properly, there could be the vulnerabilities out there for years, and it makes it prime target for hackers. And the impact is huge. That's another issue there.
And you've already taken a lot of examples. So kind of, and you have seen ransomware, shutting down hospitals, supply chain attacks hitting thousands of companies, and nation state hackers lurking for months. You've already mentioned like they were there for five
Right.
years. What common mistakes do you see organizations are still making?
Okay, so mistakes are like they see in most of the cases, if you see, they are not sophisticated zero-day exploits.
Mm,
They are simple things which if organization are focused, if they are disciplined, they can avoid. So it's like this, we know from where the attackers are coming, we know
mm,
which door they are entering, but we choose not to close that. That's the biggest issue there. So if you look at numbers, so the ransomware, the way it impacts business, it's huge. So the cost is huge. It costs like millions of dollars for each breach what happened for organization. And you can lower that if you keep certain discipline in place. Say for example, if you have a matured zero trust system in place, you can reduce this cost by
mm,
close to $2 million. And then if you are using automation for cyber defense in combination of AI, you can reduce the cost by up to 1.9 million. This is based on the data available publicly through IBM research, etc. Now, when you look at the attacks, most of the attacks what happened are identity based attacks, which are
mm,
like, and majority of them are brute force or password spray. Now, if
mm.
you have any modern day MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, you can avoid 99% of these attacks. But what happens is most of the organizations, they are not consistent. They have MFA in place, but for some reasons, your service accounts and other non-human identities
Yes.
are not covered there. MFA is not enforced properly, and that causes these breaches or the attacks which are happening. This is one of the most common things. The other is human errors. We always know human the weakest link in cybersecurity, and
Right.
most organizations probably don't spend enough to train their employees. So if you look at the stats, somewhere like 88% or 86% of attacks have got human error as in a key reason for that. It could be as simple as sharing password. It could
Right.
be as simple as clicking on a link, falling prey to social media engineering. These are
Yes.
the things which cause these breaches, which could be avoided with proper training and due diligence for each employees.
With all these, like, there was a question coming to my mind. With all these open source AI tools being used inside the organization, do you think it has become very complex now, like, to kind of?
Right. So this was always an issue. Shadow IT is the term what we use.
Yes.
They said this was always complex because of, or like not always, I would say in last decade or so, it was complex due to this. So business, many times they subscribe to cloud service without even IT knowing this. Now AI is the next layer of complexity. So people are using AI, and it's not approved in many cases. The organizations have not formed the policy how to govern AI. So that one part. In many cases, the employees they just upload the critical
Sir, I have
information.
seen, sorry to interrupt, but I have
Yeah.
seen, partner level people at companies like, the enterprise, they are putting up, uploading data on chat GPT and kind of
Exactly.
generating content.
Because
Isn't it dangerous, sir?
it
Like,
is very dangerous. That the thing is it makes their life easier. And because there is no policy in place to restrict it, there are no guidelines issued. So there are two type of control. One is the administrative control, which is you having a clear policy in place, what to do, what not to do. The other is technical control. So even if someone is trying to do this, how do you stop that? So organizations need to have that for AI. If I combine this with the topic what we had, the attack surface, so AI It's dangerous for organizations in many ways. Of course, it's improving efficiency, but if you look from the cybersecurity point, it has become very easy for attackers to target. And you don't need to have that skill what was needed earlier. Now even a college pass out can take a help from AI and launch an attack. Of course, the organizations also get help. Like now you need to have a big team of cybersecurity professionals to analyze each log, see what's happening. And AI can help you there. It's much faster than uh, an analyst is going to analyze the log. So it definitely helps there. So, but it's a two-edged sword. It's on both the ways. But the complexity comes because of this lack of governance on AI side. So one is, as mentioned, uncontrolled use of AI. No policy in place, and then the AI itself becomes attack surface. There's a lot of data available there. It can be misused by attacker to just launch another attack within your organization.
Yes. And we see their spendings have also, kind of, won't say dramatically, but drastically increased, like for cybersecurity than ever before. Global spend, as you were talking that day, is kind of projected around $240
Right.
billion in 2026. And yet we see breaches keep on happening. So where is the gap? Is it technology, process, or people?
If I have to put the reason, it's process primarily. But you need to understand the complexity. Now, IT is integrated into business. It's no more a separate function. So people complain about the IT cost also, which is going up drastically.
Yes.
Same is true for cybersecurity, because your business is dependent on IT now. It's not a separate function. IT is integrated into business. Same way now, cybersecurity is it's not only, as we discussed, it's not just business, it's your national issue. So yeah, that those are the reasons it's becoming more critical. So spending are increasing, but I do not fully agree to this point that it's not at value. The cost increases if you think cybersecurity as a gate pass, or if you think it to apply it later. If the security is not integrated into your business, then you will face this challenge. So say take example of product development. If you consider security as the core requirement at the design phase itself, you will not have to spend so much on security. The issue arises because you develop a product and then think of security later.
Yes.
As the stats are available there to remediate a vulnerability after the product is in production, it is 20 to 30 times higher than what it would have costed you if you did it at the design phase. So yes, it's partially true. The spending are increasing, still the breaches are happening, but you can't afford to stop that because the criminals are increasing, the incentives associated with attacks are increasing. Then we also discussed about state-sponsored groups who are working there. The complexity is huge. So yeah, the cost is increasing, but if you consider security as your core requirement for business, it's not that complex. It actually can help your business. The other thing is the communication. Cybersecurity looks like, or the security looks like, just the expense. No one looks at it as added business value. Now if you start explaining the leaders in business what is the impact, if you tell them what is the cost of a breach, how the business will be impacted, they will understand the value. If you look at the numbers, half of the small or mid-sized organizations, they close within few months after a cyber attack, or if the breach happens there. So that's the reason it's very important to have right kind of budget for cybersecurity. I'm not saying that you spend everything, and actually you don't need it. As I mentioned, it's the execution. You need to execute it well. You don't need super expensive tools to protect your environment, but you need to be disciplined. You need to execute it properly. So, yeah, so many organizations, they have policies documented, but they are just on paper. They are never used. No one knows how to use them, when to use them. If this is the situation, then the cost increases and you don't get the value what you were expecting. So again, coming back to execution, having discipline is what is the key to keep the cost in check and get the value.
And also, there is a growing perception inside the organization, much like people used to think of CFO, is that this department is a department that says no to everything. Like, it kind of slows down innovation. So how do you change the dynamics, and how do you build a security culture that enables business rather than blocking it?
Right. So again, the point what we discussed. So yes, it blocks only if you are thinking it as gate pass at later stage. If you integrate security into your processes and business in your product development, it can actually help the business. Yeah, it all depends on the organization culture where the priority is. In many cases, the teams are under pressure to deliver in the time frame what is defined, and they don't consider security as a key requirement there, and that complicates things, as I mentioned, in terms of budget as well as the time required to remediate them at later stage. And then the communication is important. So that's where the role of leaders come into to to place there, the communicating it within the organization that the security is essential for business. You cannot survive without having right kind of security practices in place.
And now we'll talk around AI. So in cybersecurity, it seems to be doing, two things simultaneously. One is obviously, we have talked about making attacks more sophisticated
Right.
and also helping making defenses more capable. So where do you see this actually playing out in practice, right?
So at the moment, I would say it's helping more on to the attackers. The reason being, the policies are not up to date for organizations. They are using, a lot of organizations are using AI to help them to respond to incidents, and it improves the time it takes to respond drastically. But at the same time, the number of attackers is growing. It has become very much easy now to find the vulnerability in an environment with help of AI, and you don't need the skills level which were needed earlier. So it's helping them. But yes, you need to have that the policies in place, how you use AI in your organization, especially around, let's not make AI another attack surface. If you take care of that part, if you have right policies in place, if you have governance in place, yes, AI is going to be very useful in protecting organizations against cyber attack.
And if you're sitting across table, from a CXO right now, CEO, CISO, board member, what are the three things that you tell them to do immediately?
All right. So to start with, I would say get your asset inventory up to date. That's the
The
biggest
concept.
challenge a lot of organizations have. They have asset inventory, but in most of the cases, it doesn't reflect your organization. So as we spoke about OT, so maybe you are just covering your IT assets there. You excluded OT, IoT. You have a lot of vendors that's you need to have everything in place. You get the complete visibility about the attack surface, because if you do not have visibility of your attack surface, how are you going to protect it? So
Yes.
that's the first thing. The other thing I would say is you cannot give same importance to everything. So identify your crown jewels. So identify which are the systems which are critical for your business. Identify them and protect them, and then apply your policies to protect all other assets. So have that in place. But you cannot protect everything, you having the budget which is available for cybersecurity. So yeah, prioritization is important there. The third thing I would say is communication. Have the communication at right level. So at the board level, explain them why cybersecurity is important. Give them example of the recent breaches what had happened. Give them example of the cost associated with breaches, against what are we going to spend to protect against them. Give them example of what happened in Singapore. So when the prime minister is talking about cybersecurity, it means it has some value, and you don't want to be the weakest link. So maybe you're part of an organization which is critical for your national defense also. So ensure that you have right skill sets in place, you have right tools in place, you have right policies in place to protect your organization.
This was bang on because I think most of the organization miss out on this identifying the right attack surface which they have.
Yeah.
And that is where it all starts. Like, and the second point, which I feel, which kind of will always stay with me is it has to be proactive. So cybersecurity should not be thought of an after kind of a
Right.
thing. Because I saw an academy also, there was a cyber attack and all the data of the students were leaked because a lot of the startups coming up, they kind of start thinking about cybersecurity once they have reached a particular
Right.
scale, which should not be the case, I think.
Exactly, that's true. And as you mentioned, the attack, identifying the attack surface, you also need to understand it's improving. Sorry, it's increasing day by day. It's not what it was a few years back. And you can't have the same threat model which you used 5 years back to protect your organization. Now you need to consider multiple factors like state sponsored attackers who are
Yes.
patient enough. They are not looking for, the money immediately. They're not asking for ransomware. So you're monitoring what is in place is probably detecting the criminals who are there just to, steal your data immediately. Maybe your use cases are not in place to detect the state sponsored attackers who are patient enough to wait for 5 years for the right
Yes.
opportunity. So have those use cases in place. That's very important in today's scenario.
And that is one of the reasons now. I think a lot of the talks go around when kind of some Chinese companies bought stakes in Paytm or something like this. All these news keep on coming in because, means, as you told, this is not something which is limited to the premises of the
Right.
company, but it is also connected with. So do you
Nations.
also feel that government should also start coming out with a more holistic framework for
Right.
cybersecurity, guiding the companies, in the ways in which they should follow that?
Right. I agree. And I think it's already happening. If you look across globe, it is already happening. I think even India, if you look, not only the cybersecurity part, even the privacy part, the government is coming out with a lot of frameworks. But it's not only about the framework. So the frameworks are there, the technology is there. It's all about the discipline. Do you really want to do that? Are you doing it just for the compliance, or are you really serious about cybersecurity? Do you think it's a real threat, or you just want to do it for the purpose of compliance, just having that check mark in place? That's the important part here.
Yeah, means don't do it like a lot of these companies in India do it for ESG compliances.
Right.
But now I've started hearing from a lot of infrastructure companies is that, if we do it just for the compliance sake, investors will not give us money. So there's an incentive attached. Now they have started following it up with proper, processes in place. That's
All
great,
right.
Ved. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights.
Thank you,
And
thank
the
you,
best
Ashish.
part, Ved, is that, thank you so much for explaining in such a layman terms that everybody, even outside of cybersecurity, should, will be able to understand this. And this is what is the goal of this podcast is
Right.
basically making sure that it's not the CISO, it's not the cybersecurity team inside your organization, but everybody, right from a sales executive to a marketing executive to an operations executive, should be aware about what can harm the organization and what can go against organizations, your actions. And that is where Ved talks about zero trust architecture is you should not, so zero trust is basically like, you should not trust
Don't
anything.
trust anyone, always
Yeah.
verify. That's the fundamental. But don't do it just for the sake of having it on paper. Implement it. So
Yeah.
there are different levels. So yeah, just ensure that you're doing it for the sake of implementing real zero trust, not just buying a product which says zero trust
Yeah.
and implement it. Right.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ved,
you,
for
Rishikesh. It was
sharing these
nice
insights.
talking to you. Thank you.